Who the hell are you?
Tolling force!
Tuyet
Your
voi.
new
Tu
landlord,
serviet le
bitch!
tuan bonoi dung than mot kitchban voiceover truyen ng hipwalian mak. Ja pong tat kakatiu kau bevan fong, kam such. Va kau truk kich ting. Fan 1. Kich ban voiceover. Koang 1.100 1.202. Music intro. Light acoustic guitar undercurrent. Switching to a tense cello drone. The morning was like a postcard. Seriously, those perfect. Manicured green lawns you see in brochures, and I was just tightening the final bolt on my new mailbox when I saw them marching down the street. 3 of the Aspen Grove Property Council in a V formation. Front and center was Brenda Hawthorne, queen of the clipboard, sun visor set at a permanent angle of judgment, followed by her shadow, Gary, who carried a rolling measuring wheel like a holy relic. I offered a casual, "Hey, good morning." Brenda stopped dead in front of my driveway, didn't even crack a smile. "Mr. Vance," she announced, her voice already pitched for confrontation. "That mailbox is a non-compliant slate blue. It violates Article 6, subsection beta of our residential charter." I looked at the mailbox, honestly thought the color was sharp, and just shrugged. "That's fine, Brenda," I said calmly. "I'm not under your charter." The pause that followed was delicious. Her eyes did that little confused twitch before they narrowed into pure, offended rage. Gary, the measuring wheel guy, actually snorted. "Every single parcel on Sycamore Circle is governed by the PC, Vance. Don't be ridiculous." "Except this one," I countered, leaning back against my fence. "You might want to check the county's original subdivision map." That was it. That was the spark. Brenda reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and said, "We're calling the authorities. You're showing willful defiance of community standards." I just nodded. "Please, go ahead. I'm Mark Vance, by the way. 42, working mostly remote as a systems architect. I deal in logic, boundaries, and things that either work or don't. I bought this place at a county auction. It was a neglected foreclosure lot, slightly oversized and affordable because the developer paperwork was a mess. I didn't care. I liked fixing things with my hands, and I liked the quiet. What I didn't know was that quiet in Aspen Grove meant controlled. Everything here was run by Brenda and her relentless clipboards. She wasn't elected. She was inherited, reigning supreme since the first slab was poured. Her favorite mantra: order is the absence of deviation. My first week, I got 3 violation warnings taped to my door, all before I'd even fully unpacked. My truck was apparently facing the wrong direction. My porch light was 10 watts too bright, and the grass was 1/8 of an inch over the mandated height. It was suburban micromanagement on steroids, but underneath all the nitpicking, the message was clear. This isn't just your home. It's ours, but I've never been one to be managed. That independence was exactly why I dove into the original county deed for my property, Parcel 33 TC. It had a weird, faint boundary line that seemed to cut the lot off right at the sidewalk. An engineer's eye notices things like that. So I made a few calls. After a week of digging through the municipal archives of Blackwood County, I finally got a clerk named Sarah on the phone. "Parcel 33C, Sycamore Circle," she rattled off. "Hold on, That property sits just outside the original Aspen Grove Development Charter. About 25 feet of unincorporated county land," I grinned. "So, technically, I'm not under the property council." "That is correct," Sarah confirmed. "They have no authority to issue fees or violations on that specific tract." The relief was immediate. Like someone had finally lowered the volume on a constant, annoying hum, but that relief lasted about 8 hours. By evening, Brenda had emailed, using that all caps, authoritarian tone. Urgent. Failure to comply. She cited their invented adjoining parcel uniformity clause. A clause, as I quickly confirmed, that existed only in her imagination and on her letterhead. And then came the line. Continued defiance will result in legal action and involvement of local law enforcement. That changed everything. It wasn't about a mailbox anymore. It was about power, and she had just threatened to weaponize the police against a neighbor over a color swatch. Fine. If she wanted a battle of bylaws, I'd bring the actual Constitution. I went back to the county records, this time in person, smelling the musty paper and stale coffee of true bureaucracy. I found a kind archivist, a guy named Mr. Henderson, who helped me pull the original charter amendments. What we found was gold. The PC had attempted to expand their boundary in 2016 to cover the last 3 lots on the block, including mine, but the filing was returned for revision and never resubmitted. For 8 years, they'd been enforcing rules on land they didn't legally govern. Mr. Henderson chuckled. Classic. They forget the law doesn't bend to their monthly minutes. But the real kicker was on that old certified plat map. Faint lines crisscrossing my parcel and extending beyond. Utility easements. Water, sewer, and even the main irrigation feed for the entire east side of Sycamore Circle ran through a narrow 15-foot strip of my land. And right where I thought the easement ended, there was another note. Common tract retention pond access. I didn't just own my house and the 25 feet of non-HOA buffer, I held the keys to their plumbing and the main access to their beloved common area pond. Their authority was written on expired paperwork. Mine was written in concrete law and underground infrastructure. I printed every page, got every seal certified, and walked out feeling less like a homeowner and more like a tactical strategist. Sound of a distant siren growing closer. And that's how we ended up on a sun-drenched Saturday morning. Right back where we started, only this time Brenda had organized a full-blown compliance hearing. Folding chairs lined her driveway, neighbors were whispering, and sure enough, a Blackwood County patrol car was parked right at the curb, an officer leaning against it, sunglasses on. Showtime. I walked across the street carrying my single, heavy folder. Brenda was at a portable podium, mic squealing. "Mr. Vance," she boomed. "Thank you for finally joining us. We are addressing your flagrant refusal to comply." I held up my hand. "Just one quick question, Brenda, before we start the show. Under which recorded county-filed covenant are you enforcing these rules?" A murmur ran through the nervous crowd. Brenda stammered. "All of them. The charter." "That's not an answer," I shot back, keeping my tone level. "I checked the records yesterday. Your last valid filing was in 2010. Your 2016 annexation proposal was rejected. So, unless you forged paperwork in the last 12 hours, your authority stops 25 feet short of my mailbox." Gary looked like he'd swallowed his measuring tape. Brenda's face went crimson. "You are undermining community order." "I'm just asking you to follow the rules you didn't write, Brenda." I then pointed at the patrol car. "Officer, since you're here, perhaps you can clarify this. I live at 145 Sycamore Circle. I have certified maps showing my property is outside the PC boundary." The officer, a tall guy named Deputy Miller, walked over slowly, took my folder, and scanned the sealed documents. The silence of the neighborhood was absolute. He handed the papers back to me, turned to a shell-shocked Brenda, and said one simple sentence that changed everything. "Ma'am, he's right. This property is not under your jurisdiction. This is a civil dispute, not a criminal matter. You can't enforce rules on land." Music transitions to a triumphant, slightly mischievous tone, maintaining the acoustic quality. Brenda was sputtering, literally gasping for air. "Then we will pursue annexation retroactively," she managed to hiss. "Good luck," I said, sliding the papers back into my folder. "I already spoke to the registrar. Your proposal was rejected 8 years ago." A few neighbors laughed nervously. The dam was cracking. Deputy Miller, to his credit, just gave her the driest look possible. "Annexation is not contagious, ma'am. It requires paperwork." The hearing dissolved. Brenda, humiliated in front of the very people she'd lorded over for a decade, shouted that she'd handle it through formal channels. Deputy Miller gave me one final piece of advice. "Document everything, Mr. Vance. If they keep sending fines, save every copy." I nodded, tapping my folder. "Already done, Deputy." The silence that fell over Aspen Grove the following week wasn't peace. It was the quiet before a major market correction. I used that silence not to unpack the rest of my boxes, but to continue my deep dive into the county's foreclosure listings. I'd learned my lesson. Always look at the neglected fine print. And that's when I saw it. 3 adjacent parcels up for bid. Tract A5, the lot under the main community clubhouse. Tract A6, the 5-foot pedestrian path connecting the entire neighborhood to the main street. And Tract A7, the utility buffer, the land directly under their decorative fountain and the main power junction. The listings all shared a cryptic note: lapsed ownership, unpaid back taxes. A quick cross-reference confirmed my suspicion. These were the original common areas. The HOA, or the Property Council as they called themselves, had been using land that technically belonged to a defunct development company that went bankrupt a decade ago. The land had quietly reverted to the county, and the PC had simply assumed ownership without ever finalizing the transfer deed. They were collecting dues and maintenance fees for facilities they didn't legally own. At the county auction the following Thursday, there were only 2 bidders, myself and some guy looking for timberland. He dropped out after the second bid. By noon, all 3 parcels, the land under their clubhouse, their walking path, and their fountain, were mine. Paid in full, legally recorded. I had just bought the entire common tract of the Aspen Grove Property Council. The next Saturday, the PC had scheduled their monthly meeting inside the community hall, a building that now sat literally on my private property. I didn't arrive alone. With me was Mr. Klein, a property lawyer I hired, and a uniformed sheriff's deputy, who was there just to verify county filings. Brenda spotted me walking in and her face tightened. "Mr. Vance," she said with forced calm, "this meeting is for active members only. You are not a resident under our charter." I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed 3 thick folders onto the table, each labeled Tract A5, A6, A7, Title and Deed Transfer. "Actually, Brenda," I said, "I'm here as the rightful owner of the ground you're standing on." The room went completely silent. The only sound was the lawyer, Mr. Klein, calmly explaining to a stunned Gary that, as of last week, the deeds for the retention pond, the walking path, and the land directly beneath this building were registered under my name. Brenda's practiced smile finally broke. "You're joking. You can't possibly think you can just take that from us." "I didn't take anything," I countered, looking her directly in the eye. "I bought what your council never bothered to protect. You've been maintaining facilities and collecting dues on land you never legally owned." The sheriff's deputy stepped forward, confirming the facts. "The county records are clear. These tracts are now private property. The Property Council has no legal authority over them." The neighbors started whispering. It was a low, satisfying roar. The shock was turning into relief. The people who had been silently oppressed by Brenda's clipboard tyranny were watching the tables turn in real time. "This is extortion," Brenda hissed, her voice shaking. "Extortion implies coercion, Miss Hawthorne," Mr. Klein smoothly interjected. "This is simply recorded ownership. Furthermore, given that your main irrigation and utilities run through Mr. Vance's land, you might want to stop the fines before we discuss trespassing." The applause started small, a single neighbor in the back row clapping once, then louder, spreading like wildfire. It wasn't mocking, it was pure, unadulterated release. I reached for my final document, a simple form. "I'm not shutting anything down," I said over the noise. "I've already filed a temporary use agreement. You can all continue to use the common areas, rent-free. All I ask is 2 things. That the Property Council formally dissolve its claim over property it doesn't own, and that they stop harassing their neighbors." Brenda looked utterly defeated, her shoulders slumping. "You did this to humiliate me," she whispered. I shook my head. "No, Brenda. You did that when you called the cops on your own neighbor instead of checking a map." That was the final gavel strike. Within a week, the Aspen Grove Property Council was functionally dissolved. Brenda's SUV was gone from her driveway, and a "For Sale, Available Immediately" sign was planted in her pristine lawn. She moved out of the neighborhood she had ruled, leaving behind a community that was finally learning how to breathe again. My mailbox, the infamous slate blue one, still stands today, unpainted, a silent monument to the power of due diligence. The fear is gone. In its place, we have community gatherings, mismatched fences, and kids drawing with chalk on the sidewalks where violations used to be photographed. Because I realized justice doesn't always roar in the courtroom. Sometimes it just arrives quietly on a sunny Saturday morning. When the truth finally owns the ground, it stands on. Tell me honestly, have you ever had to fight someone who thought they had power over you, only to find out their entire authority was built on a lie? Drop your story in the comments below, and let's talk about boundaries.